Welcome in to the FFPC live draft coverage, the first one of 2023. I'm your host, Aidan Liquorie. Joining me as always, Dave Terp. Terp, good to be back. Starting earlier than last year. Last year, I think we started in the middle of summer. This year, we said last year, we said we're going to start doing these at the Never Too Early. It is April 6th, and here we are for our first live draft coverage of the year. Picks are already popping off.
Did Justin Jefferson get hurt?
I mean, what a way to start this. We're starting this with Justin Jefferson falling to the 4th overall pick.
I mean, these always bring fireworks, but I didn't expect them fireworks. Usually the first round is kind of quiet, and I mean, I'm not saying any of those three guys that were taken over him are bad picks, but I think he's a slam dunk 1-1 this year.
I mean, what I love about these drafts is we start right at 8, right when the draft starts, and instantly we're already about 6 picks in. So off the board, Jamar Chase goes first overall. Then Christian McCaffrey as the 2nd overall pick, Travis Kelce, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and Austin Eckler. I mean, Justin Jefferson falling outside of those top, 3 picks, how rare, and that's, I think, going to be rare.
I've seen a bunch of these draft boards, and I don't think I've seen it once. So very, very surprising start here. And it looks like the guy who drafted 4th autoed him. So he's probably going to log in here eventually, hopefully, and be very, very surprised if he landed Jefferson.
I mean, yeah, it's just, you said it. You've seen a lot of boards. And Jefferson, I believe here, I can actually go look right now, looking at the Never Too Early Best Ball ADP for the last couple of weeks, brought to you by Fantasy Mojo. The farthest he's dropped is 1.2 before this draft. So this is the farthest at Justin Jefferson has ever dropped in the Never Too Early Best Ball.
Very, very surprising start. Nothing else has been surprising in this first round so far, I would say. But that is shocking to me.
Austin Eckler, RB2 right here in the 6th overall pick. He kind of came out this week, kind of said, hey, I'll play for the Chargers. There's kind of a punch in the face, not getting a new contract. He requested a trade. With all that uncertainty, where are you at with Austin Eckler? He was running back 1 last year overall, fantasy, especially PPR monster. But uncertainty, age is getting up there. What are your thoughts on Austin Eckler this season?
I mean, it's really hard not to still like him. I mean, that offense with Kellen Moore, Herbert taking the next step, you would think, probably bringing in some more weapons at the receiver position in the draft. You'll see in a couple of weeks if they take a running back a little early, maybe they're going to try to play hardball. But at the end of the day, Eckler's going to be out there for the Chargers. I'd be very, very surprised, if he's not. So, yeah, Austin Eckler's still very, very, I think he's worth this pick. I don't think it's a bad pick. I wouldn't take him over, let's say, a Jonathan Taylor, but I don't think it's a bad pick at all. I mean, nothing surprising about this first round outside of Jefferson. I mean, there's a couple guys that I might not agree with over another guy, but nothing like egregious.
Closing out the first round, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, and Bijan Robinson. Turk, I'm going to ask you kind of, obviously, the NFL draft will change things. This is a Never Too Early Best Ball tournament. Ends on April 27th, so the last day of the draft is right before the NFL draft. Obviously, the draft will change things, but just early perception for me, and you're kind of seeing it, is it really worth it this year to take a running back besides maybe Christian McCaffrey in those early picks? I think you're looking at all these running backs, and we can talk about them. Austin Eckler, kind of trade demand, getting up there in age. Jonathan Taylor playing behind an awful O-line. Saquon obviously kind of has these known injury bugs. He's playing on the franchise. The uncertainty surrounding these running backs. Essentially, my question to you is, why would you take a running back besides McCaffrey within those first 6 picks?
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I also think there's some uncertainty at the receiver position. I mean, if you look at some of these guys who are going late first round, Cooper Kupp, I mean, you have no idea the Rams are looking like this year. Yeah, he could get 500 targets. But without Matthew Stafford, I mean, they could be in full tank mode, trying to get Caleb Williams or one of the other top quarterbacks in the draft. Garrett Wilson, what if they don't get Aaron Rodgers? Who's playing quarterback there? Devontae Adams, is Jimmy G going to be the first reason why he falls down? Everybody else makes sense, but I don't think everybody's going to be doing it this year. I said this last time I was on with Balky. Everybody's going to be using the same mentality. Take receivers early, let running backs go, do the 0 RB, 1 RB, whatever your favorite thing is. I just think this year, like, Jonathan Taylor's a guy I'm very, very high on. I don't hate Barkley Robinson will depend obviously on where his spot is, but I don't think it's a bad idea to get one of these running backs early and then just fill out, your receiver room, because there's plenty of receivers. There's always receivers that, St. Brown, Wilson, and last year, guys like that take the next step up. So I don't think it's a terrible idea. I don't even think it's a terrible idea to do the Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry type of start. I'm not a Derrick Henry guy, but it's not these early drafts. You gambling could get you into some serious trouble early. So I think you take the guys who are a little bit more certain, especially at the running back position, because it's so wide open, and then just fill the roster out from there, because there's plenty of upside at the receiver position.
Looking at our second round, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Josh Allen pairs with Stephon Diggs, giving a nice little stack there to the ninth team in our draft. Breece Hall, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Derrick Henry, Jalen Waddle, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, and Jalen Hurts closes it out. Terp, I wanted to talk real quick, back to that first round. Bijan Robinson goes last pick of the first. Is there any way Bijan Robinson gains value on draft day? The way it's been tracking all the teams he's been linked to, it almost just seems to come the NFL draft day, he's going to go to a team, he's going to maybe be a committee, and there's going to be a guy there, and fantasy owners kind of just shake their head. I'm all in on Bijan. I think it's always dependent on landing spot, but I think there's starting to be some serious concerns, especially when you're looking at him getting drafted in the first round, about, well, where is he actually going to go? And a lot of these teams could hamper his fantasy value early on.
I asked this question. To get first round value, where is the best spot for him?
You're asking this to me?
I am.
I mean, the easy answer is Philly, right?
But is it?
I would say so. I think with that O-line and his talent, I don't think they run Hurts as much with a Bijan, right?
It's a good thought process, but I don't think Philly's the best. I mean, best fans. Is he a count? He's definitely. I'm with you. I'm sky high on him. But is Philly? If they take him 10th overall, obviously it's exactly what you want. Because they're not taking him that high. If they don't think he's going to be, day one, 20 carry type of situation. But I think there's just a lot of spots he can land in. I've heard the Chargers.
Yeah.
I've heard Dallas. I mean, Tampa Bay. Like
New England.
You keep going through these spots. It's like, where is the nut spot for him that you're like, I'm all in if he goes there? I don't really know if there is one that's like seen right now where you can just be like, yeah, that makes sense. There's a couple spots that obviously would be really good. But I would say the Falcons are not taking him more in their draft, but I think that'd be a great spot for him. Really nobody that's threatening in my, Algier, Cordell Patterson, they don't really excite me. But there's a couple other spots that I think are good. But is there any that are great right now? I think he's more of I think he's a little bit getting overdrafted right now. I know that's not a popular opinion, but
I think that they also, you kind of hinted at it, the assumption that he probably won't go in the top 10 picks, which is where some of his best fantasy value could lie. Right?
Could he be Breece Hall of last year, how it was, the projected going before the injury? Of course. But that was a ridiculously good spot for Hall. Is there a spot out there right now where you could say plug in him? Not that he's not the most talented, dynasty number one, without a doubt, clear cut, no doubt. But where is his spot where a team's going to make a move to get him? I just feel like all his spots could be a little muddy early on. If he goes to the Chargers, if they're like the Bengals, Bengals would be the best spot, in my opinion, if they just cut ties with Joe Mixon. You're talking about that's a spot that can move his value up. If you're looking for a spot that, sky high, I can see him getting top 5, 6, possibly. That's the spot. But will the Bengals do it? I don't see it.
Terp, second round, what's your favorite pick of that second round? And then we'll kind of look into our teams that are already starting to take shape. But is there any pick there you're looking at this second round where I'm all in on the value of that player?
He's moving up, and the only thing that scares me is Jerry Jones in the draft. But Tony Pollard, I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I could easily see him with no craziness in the draft with Robinson, Gibbs, none of those guys going to Dallas, or them not just moving, Kareem Hunt for some weird reason in there. I don't think they'll do that. his upside is sky high. I mean, Dallas, the offense is still very, very good. There's no Zeke there to get them goal line touches. It's his team now. They just signed him to, obviously it was a franchise tag, but they signed a good paycheck. So my guess is they're going to try to run him into the ground. His injury is a concern, of course. He did get hurt at the end of last year, but it'll be really, really hard for me to pass on Tony Pollard at that kind of value.
I mean, do you think I've been when I'm looking at these boards, I'm just kind of assuming that the Cowboys are going to add a running back probably in the draft. Just because that's their makeup. I don't think Pollard's going to be the only guy there.
Unless Ronald Jones.
That
was sarcasm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Somebody's getting added to that team. There's no way they're just going to go.
I don't think Bijan.
I would love that, because if they do, Tony Pollard's a first-round draft pick.
I don't think Bijan falls to them, right? That was kind of trendy at the start, right? Bijan 26.
You want to talk about a disastrous spot for fantasy football now, here, wherever. That is a disastrous spot.
But I feel as though Dallas has shown that they could hold
first round value on Robinson. No, he has to fall. He's not going to the first round anymore if he goes to Dallas.
I would agree with that, but I'm saying that Dallas has shown that they can have two quality fantasy backs. They've done it, right? I mean, Pollard will probably just maintain the same role.
That's it.
Bijan the same carries, right? Bijan.
I would think so, but. Man,
I agree with you. His value drops, but I don't think that's the worst landing spot.
No, it's not the worst landing spot, but I don't think it's a very good one.
The worst one is when I saw that Bijan at 14th to the Pats, because that's just, it feels as though that
complete disaster. That is
Ramondre. I feel as though it could almost be irrelevant. Like what's
irrelevant?
I've seen it with Dallas. I've seen them have two quality backs.
No receivers, but let's get another running back. I can see Bill Belichick doing that because he's not that smart anymore.
Bill's. I was a big Bill supporter, so still kind of have to be, but some of the recent decisions are a little bit concerning. Ramondre went there in the fourth. Let me just recap the third real quick. Devonta Smith, Patrick Mahomes, Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Nick Chubb, Joe Burrow, Chris Olave, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, guy Travis Etienne, Justin Fields, and DeAndre Hopkins. Goes into the round. Teams are beginning to take shape. Whose draft are you liking? Looking at, for me, Team 7, loving that start. The CD Amon-Ra, Chris Olave, Dallas Goedert. I want to hear who
number 10 for me. Taylor, Garrett Wilson, who hopefully will get Rodgers. If not, I would guess that the Jets go after Lamar Jackson pretty heavily. But then, I mean, you have 3 top-tier running backs. I know it's not a popular way to go this year, but I feel like after Najee Harris is a big drop-off at running back, and to secure 3 of them where there's still plenty of receivers left, you're definitely having a major advantage over the field so far.
Najee Harris, where are you at on him this year? Obviously, you were pretty – honestly, a lot of the high-stakes community was pretty low on him last year. But then just sometimes even last year, he did struggle, came in beat up. Still believe he finished RB14. Does the volume just went out in a hope of kind of a better health and hopefully an improving Steelers offense? Where you think this 4th round is right where he's at? Like,
he was banged up last year, so I'm going to give him that. I'm back on board this year. He's somebody I like. I mean, and at this value, I don't see how you pass him up. I mean, look at some of the guys that got drafted after him, the non-tight ends. Dobbins, I mean, a lot of that's going to depend on what Lamar does. Debo, who's playing quarterback? Like, there's a lot of questions there. Amari Cooper is really going to come down to the Browns dilemma. Keenan Allen, is he washed? Drake London, who's his quarterback? So you look at all the guys that got drafted after him. I mean, I think that's a slam dunk pick right there.
Kind of, we talked about it. It was one of our buzzwords last year, right? I think it's a big buzzword in fantasy now. We can maybe touch base on it later, but if you had to just gather from what you've been seeing this year, where does the running back kind of dead zone start this year? Is it right around the Najee?
I think it's right after Najee. I think that like the ETN, Stevenson, Najee, and then it's like Aaron Jones, a lot of questions there, with obviously Rodgers likely moving on, unless something crazy happens. AJ Dillon's still in there. He restructured his contract, so they're not really like, gung-ho about him. J.K. Dobbins, they don't have anybody there besides Gus Edwards, who was banged up last year. But there's still so many questions with Lamar. Who's playing quarterback there? And I would guess they add somebody in the draft, for competition.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dalvin Cook, I think he's a good value right now. I mean, but there's still questions surrounding him. They gave Madison a little bit of money. Is there still a possibility they trade Dalvin Cook? I've been hearing the Miami rumors. So you got to watch out there. I feel like that's where the dead zone. After Najee, I feel like you just start waiting and just draft receivers.
There's one name who's missing from this draft who I don't think would qualify in the dead zone. I'm really surprised is falling. No Jahmyr Gibbs yet. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is not going to be part of that dead zone because I think he's going to explode in fantasy.
I agree. I like him a lot. I think he's a very, very people use the comparison to Alvin Kamara. I feel like he has value no matter where he goes. He's an explosive player, has the pedigree of Alabama. Most of their running backs have been successful in the NFL. So I'm with you there. I'm a big Gibbs guy. He's very, very high on my draft boards.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where Gibbs going. He's a guy who, unlike Bijan, you're kind of seeing going either early second, there he goes just now, early second, or even sometimes late first, which is a way more enticing option than some of these mid-round Bijan teams, right?
I agree.
Falcons is option. The Chiefs have been kind of thrown out there. Bengals, right? There's options.
Two great spots right there, Kansas City and Cincy, teams that are ready to win now. Who, little tweak here and now. I know Pacheco was really good last year, but my guess is they probably bring McKinnon back like they did, late last year. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't. There's no reason. CEH, I would guess, is probably out of town or traded for, late draft pick to somebody who might be running back, crazy to start the year. But there's so many good spots for Gibbs, and he's not being talked about as much as Robinson, and he shouldn't be. But he's very, very talented, and he's a guy that could be an explosive rookie right off the top.
Yeah, he went at the 5.8 mark. He's been going at the 5.2, so a little bit of value there. The earliest,
a little bit of value there.
Earliest he's gone in this format so far I should preface over the last couple of weeks has been 4.1. So he's gone early fourth. There's a little bit of value there. I am surprised he lasted that long. I think Gibbs is, while Bijan, I think a lot of people are expecting like instant workhorse. That's always the goal. Gibbs is the guy who I could see kind of almost reminiscent of Kamara. I know those comps are easy, but the first couple of games of the season, he's not doing much, and he kind of slowly just takes on a bigger and bigger role with his team. But the skill set's there. I mean, I believe, right? I'm not blaming here. Chicago, right? That early second there in need of a running back. That could be an interesting landing spot. A lot of interesting names. Chris Godwin just went off the board, so that kind of just drew my attention. Where are you at on the Tampa receivers? Are you staying away with Baker and Trask, or?
It's just, I think Godwin is a little bit better of a pick than Evans. I don't think that's like a sharp take. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of, Baker, Kyle Trask, like there's just nothing exciting about either of them. Yeah, could they put up some games here and there, but like to start either one of them every single game. This is best ball, so you can get away with it. But I don't know. I just think that there's other guys with more upside that can bring you a little bit more. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to shock anybody. I think they're going to be more of a run the ball, play action pass. Do I ever think, Baker's going to be out there throwing the ball 30, 40 times? No. So that limits, the upside that they had with Brady, obviously, because they were more of a throwing team and a throwing atmosphere, throwing the ball around the field before last year's debacle. So, I just think there's better options. The two guys got drafted after him, I would take over him.
He's probably going to go somewhat soon. His ADP has been 8-1, so would be a little early. But let's say because the Buccaneers have been also seen a couple of Bijan picks there, right?
Wouldn't be the worst spot for him, but
Buccaneers don't take a running back in the draft, right? How high are you on Rachaad White this year?
Very high. What's there not to like about him?
Could he be the best skill? I think if they don't spend an early draft pick on a running back, I think White's probably their highest drafted skill position player.
I agree. It'll be him or Godwin. I don't think there's any question about that, especially as we get closer to drafts. And if it's just White and, Chase Edmonds and some other role, guys that you never heard of, I think White has the potential. The coach comes out and they say he wants to be a third down back. Yeah, that could be coach speak, but it's something to monitor. I mean, it's definitely something if they don't add a Gibbs or a Robinson or some of the other top backs that are in the draft. White's definitely a guy to watch and definitely a guy that will move up draft boards.
Team 7 has fully caught my attention, right? I think he's going to be the trendy name of draft season. Talk about a guy who, when those training camp videos start coming out of him burning corners, catching the deep balls, Jameson Williams' stock is going to skyrocket. But this team,
rightfully so. I mean, he was my number one receiver coming out. The talent is there, the speed's there, the game-breaking ability's there. Amon St. Brown's still there, which people might be like, wow, that's a bad thing. It's definitely not a bad thing because he's going to do all that underneath stuff, the short, intermediate type of patterns. And Williams is going to, as you saw some flashes last year, he's going to go up top and just take it deep and kill teams. I mean, he is, in my opinion, you're going to see some flashes in the preseason. They're going to make him skyrocket up draft board. So people say, like, what's the benefit of drafting early? Jameson Williams is the perfect example because it only takes a couple of, hype videos here and there. And next year, by the time August rolls around, he's going to be Cortland Sutton, 3rd round draft pick. So there's always a benefit, obviously, to drafting early. And I think a player like Jameson Williams is definitely one of them.
I mean, Jameson Williams ADP in this contest 6'8" as of the last couple of weeks. He goes 6'5" today. But I think, as you said, that this could be going late 4s come the summer. I really
easily.
Do. And I mean, a recent memory has shown, right? We've seen the teams in recent memory, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Chase Higgins. I'm not saying Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams are going to be like that, but there's this idea of having 2 incredibly fantasy successful receivers. There's always, I guess, the Jared Goff question, but Goff had
2 solid backs, a very good offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's talks of a tight end possibly emerging, but there's a very good tight end draft coming up, so they can add a weapon there. So Marvin Jones, a veteran coming in to be the 3rd receiver who's no slouch. So it's definitely something to monitor, and especially preseason. The hype always gets, out of control. He's definitely a guy that can get you out of control, but in a good way, in my opinion.
The Deontay Johnson pick here, started 7th. Let's go there. And we're going to kind of bounce around this draft board as these picks keep coming. But Deontay Johnson kind of seen a split because you've seen fantasy Twitter, right? You see a lot of people saying he had just an incredibly unlucky season last year, and he's due to progress back to his mean, right? You just don't have that many catches without a touchdown. Steelers' offense was a bit wonky, has a ton of targets. That should continue. And then you have the other side is just he's on the decline. Pickens is the receiver you want from Pittsburgh. Najee hopefully healthy. They'll have a better run game. Where are you at on Deontay Johnson? Because is he value? Is he being rightly picked? Or are you staying away? Where are you at kind of early on?
I think he's a value. I think he's definitely a value in these drafts. I mean, last year was just so, Kenny Pickett getting his lumps, all the issues at the quarterback position before then. I just think he's a very, very strong value at 7th round on a guy who's still going to catch a ton of passes. If he just catches a couple touchdowns, I mean, he's going to exceed value and is a smash pick right now, with Kenny Pickett. George Pickens, very talented. Love the guy. Just freak. Going to be a great player in this league. But I think he's more of a boom or bust guy when I feel like Johnson's the more steady Eddie guy with the upside to still put up 4th, maybe 3rd round numbers.
Mackenzie Kramer's in our chat saying between Pitts and Jameson, I'm trying to build the ultimate training camp hype team. I'd also throw in Jahmyr Gibbs into that because I think he's going to
throw in Breece Hall too. If he gets a little, he shows a couple cuts in preseason. I'm going to guess they probably put their gloves on the guy, and you're not going to see much of him. But all you need to see is one practice video of Breece Hall taking it to the house on a cutback, and he's going to be skyrocketing up board. So that is definitely the hype monster of a team, and a team I like. No negative things to say about that team.
Breece Hall, you mentioned him. We didn't talk about him. I think we actually talked about him with Dan Williamson, I want to say, when we kind of did we previewed, kind of just talked about the rookies, talked about early ADP. That's on our YouTube. Go check that out. But we kind of talked about Breece Hall there. But it's a bit early.
It's early for me. I mean, I need to see it more.
It's tough. It's tough.
Running backs coming off injuries is usually guys I just don't I don't touch. And sometimes it's going to bite you in the butt, but I just feel like there's just other picks. I mean, St. Brown, pretty much anybody after him except Josh Jacobs. Even Josh Jacobs, really. I mean, I feel like it's just a better pick, especially this early in drafts. I mean, I know people say, like, if you wait and see, you're making a mistake and you're going to get burned. But for a player like Hall, that's coming off such a very serious injury as a rookie on a team that needs to win now, I don't think they're going to rush him back, especially if they get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, just the explosive big playability is there. We saw what he could do, and who knows? And athlete recovery is so much better this day and age. I think there's a tendency to just be like, I think he should be okay, but you may have to kind of almost plan for a bit of a recovery period back into 4 to 6 weeks before they can get a kind of optimal strength. Terp, I'm looking at team 6 here, right? And
I was going to ask you that question. Like, I don't understand.
We're not neutral. We don't just analyze the draft. We want to give our opinion. We respect all drafters. We don't respect all drafts, right?
Team 6 all drafters. Hey, if you're putting up $125, you're putting up any money right now in what is it, April 6th? Hey, you get all the respect in the world from me and from all fantasy people. That doesn't mean I have to like your team, because I do not understand at all what they're trying to build here. Like 0 receivers through 7 rounds. I mean, that's not a recipe for success, especially with 2 quarterbacks and no stacks that are really possible. Joe Burrow, Higgins is gone, and Chase is gone. You had pretty much Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, I'm guessing you can still pull in Zay Jones, but Ridley's gone. I think, Ridley's gone, and so is Christian Kirk. Evan Ingram's gone. I don't understand Miles Sanders, why. It just doesn't fit any team I would ever build, no matter the format. I mean, no receivers. I'm sure they're going to take one here. Dalton Schultz as your tight end. I think he's underrated this year. Personally, I think he's a guy that should be, a good value if you're waiting on tight end, because especially if they bring in a Bryce Young or even CJ Stroud, I mean, they got to throw the ball to somebody there, and a veteran tight end with no real talent behind him is definitely something to watch.
I want to talk about, I don't want to keep jumping back to these early rounds, but I kind of have to with Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry last year, I was looking it up today. He finished running back 4 last year, but it's almost a bit deceiving if you look at it. First 3 games, he was under 100 yards. Then he had 5 straight games where he was over 100. Obviously,
monster games
there, right? His next 4 kind of banged up, all under 100 again, considerably so. Multiple and just 30-yard, awful yards per carry. And he closed out strong with 4 straight 100-yard games at the end of the season. But you're seeing kind of the age start to wear a bit. Tennessee might be awful next year, right?
He's talking about throwing the ball more. There's talks that they're going to move up to number 3 and get a quarterback. Tannehill's still there. The receivers outside.
There's rumors that Bill Barnwell of ESPN was saying it's like, oh, Derrick Henry could be a surprise cut candidate. Like,
also they were trying to trade him.
Tennessee's in flux. Derrick Henry is my biggest of the first 3 rounds. Just don't even touch, no matter how far he falls. Just completely stay away.
I agree. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I've never been on. I wouldn't say like not touch. I still think he has some value. I wouldn't take him over Ken Walker. I would definitely not take him over Tony Pollard. So Nick Chubb, I would not take him over. Guys like that. So like if he falls to a spot that makes sense, but I agree with you. I mean, there's just too many questions on a team that's, I mean, is Ryan Tannehill a slam dunk starter? And if they go with Malik Willis, I mean, I would think they go in full tank mode, because Derrick Henry carrying the ball 20, 30 times isn't winning you anything with Malik Willis.
I don't know if the Malik Willis experiment might be over before it started. I mean, if you're Josh Dobbs is starting.
He was awful last year. Awful.
I was super high on him too.
So bad. Never liked him. Never liked him coming out. Always thought he was he was definitely somebody I was right on. Just
so speaking of Malik Willis, where are you at on Anthony Richardson?
He's definitely a guy I like. He's definitely a guy that I hope gets drafted in a place where he sits a year, learns a little bit, and then year 2, like Seattle would be a spot for me that I think would be good.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts maybe, but they're a team that got to win now, so I don't see them making that pick. I mean, they have Gardner Minshew, but like he's not winning you anything, and that's a division that's still winnable. Jacksonville's there, but the Colts still have the talent enough to get there. So when it comes to Minshew, it's just like, I don't know. Richardson, he's a guy that I like a ton. I mean, like, his upside is immense. You see all these videos and pro days and combines and all this cool stuff. The talent's there. He is my quarterback one in the class, but he also is by far the biggest risk. So a team, I would love to see him go to a team like Seattle, sit a year, learn the game, be around a veteran like Geno Smith, a veteran coach, even though I'm not really a big fan of him, and Pete Carroll, talented wide receivers and Lockett and Metcalf, develop, learn, and then next year take the fantasy world by storm.
Turp, we haven't even talked about Lamar Jackson yet. He goes here 6th round. I know it's early. I know you can find value. Maybe everything gets worked out. But maybe I'm overreacting, but in my head, there's almost a legitimate chance that he could just sit out this year, which makes the investment, even in the 6th round, super risky to me.
You're drawn dead.
Are you taking Lamar Jackson before you know where he's going to wind up?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I feel like he's a player that where he's being drafted, you can't draft him because my top 3 situations of where he could go. Number 1, he sits out the season. I agree with you. I think that's the best case scenario. Number 2, he goes back to the Ravens. Number 3, the Commanders, when they sell or not sell, they eventually just figure it out and make the deal work. Besides that, where is his options? The Colts, how's that going to work out? They're not trading the 4th overall pick for him, so they're going to make the trade after the draft and then trade 2 number 1s for the next 2 years. Like, if you're the Ravens, what would you do that for? So, I don't know. Lamar Jackson's too risky for me. And that makes a lot of the Ravens really risky for me. Like, Bateman, 8th round. Like, loved Bateman last year. Started off good. They got hurt. And was pretty much, obviously done for the year. Dobbins. They don't have any other receivers. Mark Andrews is never a guy that I've been a big fan of. So the questions in Baltimore are a ton. I still think that's a great spot for Trey Lance. If the 49ers get, a little crazy and think that he's not the answer there, I would love to see him go to the Ravens. I think that's a great spot for him. But Lamar Jackson, not a guy I'm drafting in the 6th round.
Looking at kind of the 6th round still right next to Lamar, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Right now, I think he's just a clear rookie receiver I want before anyone.
Not even close. I don't think it's close.
And the landing spots are kind of the opposite of Bijan. I think a lot of these receivers
except New England don't want him to go to New England.
Besides New England, a big boost, right? And even New England,
he's the best receiver by a landslide, but still, I don't know if I trust. Bill O'Brien's there now, so it's definitely a better offensive mind. Obviously, than the disaster that was last year. But the jury's still out on Mac Jones.
So that's interesting. He's the top. Who would be second for you, Addison, or are the other guys just kind of? I'm waiting to see where they kind of fall.
I can tell you one guy that I'm not on this year, and that's Quentin Johnson.
Okay,
not a fan. I think he's a talented kid.
Does the TCU scare you? Never been a good TCU.
Let's not bring that up. I don't want to have. Jalen Reagor was a guy that I loved more than. Jeez, that's just. I might go cry real quick in the bathroom. I love Jalen Reagor coming out, but I feel like Quentin Johnson. Is he that fast? Is he really that talented? Like, I don't know. Something about him just doesn't catch my eye. His combine was okay. I'm definitely off on him. The guys I like are the Zay Flowers, Josh Downs, guys like that. They're guys that Jordan Addison's a guy that I like. It's just a question of where would be a good spot for him. He's a guy I feel like can get lost on a team like let's use the Bears or somebody like that. Like, I feel like he can get a team that could get. He's not going to get a lot of targets right off the jump, and with Zay Flowers and Downs, I feel like they can get where they're being drafted. Kansas City, Buffalo, possibly the Chargers. Moving up type of situation. They have a better chance to, get in the better spots.
I think the issue with Quentin Johnson and the concern that I've seen people expressing his ideas, he sometimes almost physically overwhelmed defenses as in college.
A lot of drops too. A lot of issues with drops. Easy drops too. And when's the last time you've seen big body receivers that just drop. I mean, we're not talking about like, we're talking about right in your hands, easy drops. You've seen a lot of them last year, so it's definitely something to worry about too.
So Terp, our live draft coverage has been going well. Already on to the 10th round, draft is flying by, but we're going to be joined by a special guest. I believe this is our first time having a guest during our live draft coverage. Let me get him on the stream real quick. Todd Burrows, you can find him at Best Ball NFL on Twitter.
The legend himself. What's up, buddy?
You know, my best quality is my humility.
I mean, you're a legend in the best ball streets.
I like to think that, we all have our private thoughts and public thoughts. My private thoughts are, I hope that when I join a draft, people groan.
What were you, 4th overall, 5th overall in the best ball last year?
I was 4th last year and 10th the year before.
I mean, you're not going to find better accomplishments.
We're talking to the right guy. We're talking to the absolute right guy.
You think that now until you hear what I'm going to say next, which is that I've disagreed with pretty much almost all your takes so far.
I love
since
that.
I came in around Jamison Williams.
I love
that. So let's start with Jamison. I'm against you on Deontay. Now, one thing is, you get a lot of guys who have reputations who think they're what doesn't smell. And, I can disagree without being disagreeable. And I want to have conversations because I can be convinced, right? I've learned the hard way that I can, no pun intended, Terp. I've learned the hard way how often I can be wrong on players. So Jamison Williams, loved the player. I was planning on taking a shit ton of him in the 9th round. But he's in the 6th round around a bunch of guys with a lot more experience. You've got a Detroit offense that was pumped up a little bit by how bad the defense was early, and it got better as the season went along. You've got a great run offensive line. A lot of the touchdowns in that offense come through short runs. They've added David Montgomery for that role. Swift, I think, is going to make a comeback. I like his ADP. I love Jamison Williams, the player, and I don't disagree with what Aidan said. He might be a 4th round pick next year, but he also, I just am struggling with Amon-Ra in the 2nd and him in the late 5th, early 6th with Jared Goff at quarterback when half the games Goff, he plays much better at home than he does on the road. And all the other factors, I just think that the chance that Jamison Williams kills me without Amon-Ra Brown getting hurt are very small. Now, I'm a volume best ball player. I've already done, I think I did 75 underdog early best balls, and between myself and partners, I partner with Billy Musio and Shane Hallam. I'm at 25 drafts in the early FFPC. So crazy. I have a much different view on fading people than others do. I don't want to have 0 of a guy like Jamison Williams, but I am going to be underweight. Because there's so many other guys. Can you open the board back to where he went?
Yeah, he went right here, 6th round. He went wide.
So I love Damian Pierce there. I like Christian Kirk there. I love Swift there. I love Evans there. After him, McLaurin is a good choice. So, it's not that I don't like the player. I do. I just wonder, what are we going to see, out of the gate with all those other things? I could be wrong, and maybe I'm too under him.
The defense is also better. They added a lot of pieces. They were in a lot of shootouts last year. So
that's one of my points. And I think Dan Campbell is aggressive, but will he continue to be aggressive when, if they're up 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter? And Jared Goff doesn't throw a great deep ball.
That is 100% accurate there.
So I like the player, but I think he's a little expensive. I do agree with Aidan what he said, that there's going to be some blurbs where, people love Jamison Williams or he wouldn't be going this early. But then you look at Jackson Smith-Njigba going right near him, and that makes a better. I'm not taking any of him either. I just don't take the wide receivers this early unless I really think the guy's a stud. And I can always make it up in later best ball, because my later best ball volume is going to be at least 2-1, maybe 3-1 of my early. And the way I look at exposure is I look at it in total. So I know I can make it up. The rookies that my strategy in early best ball is to pound the free agent guys, because once you get clarity there, you're going to miss some, but you're going to land a lot of great values. I have a lot of Donta Foreman. I had a very good amount of Penny, a lot of Damian Harris, all guys who ended up in great spots. It might not have worked out that way, but you have to attack free agents early, because the uncertainty, some of them are going to do well. And then once that ends up, I spent a lot more time this year studying the rookies. I watched at least 4 games for every rookie of consequence. And I've got some heavy ownership on those late Tajay Spears, Roshan Johnson, Israel Abanaconda. Tajay, I'm around 40%. I just love
great
that
names
dude.
There.
And I like Devin Achane's tape, A-Chain, however you pronounce it. Mm-hmm. So I'm more looking for the values early during the uncertainty. I don't have much Charbonnet, even though I like him, because the landing spots could go bad, right? We've seen it so many times. So I can always get more of those guys. I can get Jackson Smith-Njigba if he ends up in a good spot and his ADP stays around the same. I don't see his ADP going up all that much for a guy who didn't play at all last year.
So you mentioned all those running backs, and I agree with you. I think that I've been hyping up Roshan Johnson for months. I think if he wasn't in Bijan's shadow, I think the tape looks great. He would have been even going higher projected. But I think there is also a lot of respect to him for kind of staying at Texas behind Bijan. But any receivers that you're liking value late, rookie-wise?
Well, Josh Downs has dropped a tremendous amount. I'll buy some just to have them. Let's see. Let me look real quick. I'll tell you who my most owned receivers are. Give me one sec.
Terp, any receiver off the top of your head, rookie-wise, that you're liking value late outside of the Addisons, the Quentin Johnsons, and the Smith-Njigbas who've kind of been going?
Okay. Tyler Scott was a guy I was pounding heavy. I like A.T. Perry as a guy very late. But really, Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims was a guy that I really liked. The bad thing is most of them have all moved up anywhere from, all the running backs and wide receivers I just mentioned have moved up, which on one hand sucks because you get to the end of the draft and they're not there anymore. But then you think, wow, that's the goal, right? The goal is that when ADP corrects, your take seems to be the majority of the takes, right? And as certainty gets there. So I do like those guys. I have been pounding Treylon Burks, Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver, and at tight end, I love a couple late guys. I have, and Terp, I'm not a big ownership guy, but I've got 43% Jelani Woods, and I've got about 30%
Jelani Woods supporter,
and I've got about 30% of Isaiah Likely. I'm a big believer in taking shots on really talented guys,
and they're free in drafts, so they're not really going to.
They're not going to hurt
Woods
me.
Is going undrafted in most drafts.
Injury will hurt me if one of them gets hurt.
Of course.
But, Jelani Woods, how rare is it to be able to get a guy that you legitimately think could be a top 5 tight end in the 18th, 19th, 20th round? He's got that kind of upside. Now, will 1,000%. It appear this year? Maybe not. But I'm a big believer in, I do think his floor there is pretty secure. he had enough involvement last year, and he's such a freak of nature.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that he could at least get you 5 or 6 touchdowns, almost like if they hand him off the ball.
And he'll pay off his value very
tight ends,
easily.
I tend to try and take the second-year guys who flashed more than the rookies. Although I have taken a little bit of tight end rookie this year.
I'm going to ask both of you guys this question. Turp, I'm going to start with you because you are the resident Eagles expert. Both of them almost actually went around past where they've been going. Rashad Penny, Kenneth Gainwell. Eagles running backs are successful, right? Obviously, the system, the O-line they have there. I know Jalen Hurts is kind of a touchdown vulture there on the goal line. Talk about Bijan to him, but let's say they don't add any more running backs. Rashad Penny, ADP in the Never Too Early Best Ball tournament, he's going in the middle of the 9th, running back 33. Gainwell is early 11th, running back 41. What Eagles running back are you liking? Turp, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go to you, Todd.
I like them both. I mean, Penny is definitely the guy that gives you the most upside. I mean, he's definitely a guy that you've seen when he's healthy can just break out. I mean, but the health is the big concern. They have the best offensive line in football in Philadelphia. That's no questions about it. Is the Jalen Hurts, stealing rushing touchdowns worry you? Of course it does. But Penny is if they don't draft any running backs and it's just Penny, Gainwell, and Boston Scott, you have to get plenty of shares of Penny. I wouldn't say get crazy because the injury risk is still there. Every single season he gets hurt. But the upside's there, man. And if he gets you 8, 9 games of what he's shown the last couple of years, I think it's worth it where he's being drafted. Gainwell, I've always been a Gainwell guy. I think he's a very talented kid. You saw they pretty much depended on him a lot more as the season went on last year. But he's never going to be a 20 carry guy. He's never going to be a 15 carry guy. Most of his work's going to come in the passing game, which they don't do that much. So Penny's the better pick, but I'll still mix in some Gainwell.
Todd, what about you? Any thoughts on the Eagles running back room?
Before Penny signed, I was really buying Gainwell heavy. I still have about 30%, which is very high for me. Because, again, I didn't really explain this. I'm a big believer in buy at the floor and hope for the ceiling, right? I don't think where Gainwell's going, he's going to hurt you, right? I think he's going to get – what do you need in best ball out of a 12th round running back, which is where most of my shares were? I'm looking for 5 to 7 weeks of usable points there.
Yep.
Terps, and I did back off because they do mix it up so much in Philadelphia. But I do think one of the things you have to start doing, and something I wasn't as good at a couple years ago that I've tried to get better at, is imagining scenarios that are unlikely with talented guys, right? Everything about Gainwell says that he's probably landlocked, but what if he isn't, right? What if, Penny gets dinged up, not even a major injury, Gainwell, and he does get a game where he gets 15 carries and 5 passes and he just crushes. And then, it's kind of like Austin Eckler. No one saw Austin Eckler being who he was, but he certainly flashed when he did. So late, I'm looking for guys with the talent to crush, where the floor is pretty secure, where they're not going to hurt me, but there's the talent there that if something weird happens, they could be a league winner. And I do put Gainwell in that area.
I think it's interesting. The same philosophy, I think, can be kind of applied to Penny because everyone says it every year. It's never – can you imagine if he just stays healthy with that O-line?
And they're big injuries. The ones that I worry about are the guys who are always soft tissue injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the guys that I fade. How many guys have had major injuries? Or remember back in the day, Matthew Stafford was considered injury prone, right? Yeah. You're considered injury prone till you're not, right? Penny's had some really bad luck. At the same time, he was my most owned running back last year, and
I remember this.
And I was right. He was the lead guy in that backfield. And I think that, all the more I try and bet on talented guys, and to be overweight but not crazy on talented guys, because when you get to the playoffs, and especially when you get to that last week, you need a guy who can, that 12th, 2 years ago, Penny was the guy who won people tons of money by those 2 huge weeks he had. So I want to put more and more guys like that on my teams. I don't want my whole team to be guys like that, but as I want it to be well mixed into my portfolio.
I mean, Rashad Penny, as you mentioned, a key is trying to recognize, is this person injury prone or are they just unlucky? I think Keenan Allen, obviously last year was finally banged up, but Keenan Allen always had the injury prone tag, and you kind of look at it like a lacerated kidney, which is years ago he had, that's not injury prone, that's just bad luck.
No,
Rashad Penny's
bad luck, right?
Rashad Penny's injury prone, but those 4 or 5 games for you, Terp, is going to be real nice when he's running all over teams before.
I mean, with that offensive line, the ceiling is, I don't think it's crazy to say, top 10 running back.
And Damian Harris is another one who, I love Ramondre. I was a big Ramondre guy from watching his tape. That was one that Billy Musio and I argued about. I had to drag him kicking and screaming his rookie year into some shares. We're all wrong and we're all right. But my point is, I really liked Ramondre. But when you watch the tape, Damian Harris is just as impressive as a runner, right? Damian Harris, at times, I'd watch it and I'd be like, he's doing so well. Ramondre's never going to get back on the field. Damian Harris in Buffalo is a very, very interesting guy too.
There's a lot of guys, right? You mentioned you kind of were waiting out some of these free agent cycles, and there's a lot of interesting landing spots there. Who knows what that, as you said, that Buffalo backfield is going to end up being? So I'm assuming the way you've been.
I want to be over eighth. They're 2 really good backs in the 8th and 10th or 9th and 11th round. I mean, I think you want to be over. That's why, I kicked myself last year that I was overweight, 24% on Penny, but only 8% on Walker. I was right, but I was also wrong. I should have, on non-Penny teams, because I loved Walker's tape, I should have had probably 15% Walker, right? So I want to be over on Cook and I want to be over on Harris, because if one of them gets hurt, the other one is going to do really well. And where they're being drafted, they should have enough spike potential to pay you off nicely where they are.
You've mentioned kind of between your discussion about owning Penny heavy last year and now just that last conversation, you have some takes about Kenneth Walker. I know you have some opinions on him. Where are you at with Kenneth Walker? I can pull him up on this draft board, and we'll let you get going.
I don't like anyone in that late second round.
Kenneth Walker here went.
You don't like Tony Pollard?
2-9.
Well, Pollard was up until recently a guy I was getting in the mid to late third and early 4th. 100%. So, just looking at my underdog, I've got 23% Pollard on underdog, and let me get into Mojo, and I'll tell you what I got on Pollard in FFPC.
While you're at it, I'm curious where you're at on Nick Chubb.
A guy I faded last year, and I was wrong. And I loved Nick Chubb. He was like my favorite running back that year he came out. Even like I liked him almost as much as Barkley. But I felt that, with Kareem Hunt there and a bad offense, so I think in the in half PPR in the early third, he's a great pick. I think in the FFPC, he's a good pick. He's a slightly overweight type of guy for me. So let me find Pollard.
Especially with Terp, with you, kind of the same idea. There's early reports out of Cleveland that they're going to try and throw it more and become a little more pass happy with Watson, hopefully acclimated with a full kind of offseason under his belt, had some games played. So
I've got 12% Pollard in the FFPC. So my most owned guys in the FFPC, I got 39% Damian Harris, 39% Tajay Spears, 39% Damian Pierce, 27% Gainwell, 27% Aaron Jones, 23% Pierre Strong. Those are my over 20 guys on
Devin
that.
Singletary doesn't scare you at all?
What's that?
Devin Singletary doesn't scare you at all?
He does scare me a little bit. I would say that I've cut back a little bit, but I had a lot of Singletary last year because he had played so well in the playoffs, and I thought Cook would take time to acclimate, and I was pretty right. But even then, he didn't like win me anything, right? He doesn't have that kind of upside. Dameon Pierce is really good. And I think he's got more pass game chops than I think he could see more passing work. And I think in the 6th round, especially in a half PPR, but I like him even here. I just think, if it wasn't for that injury, I think he might be a 3rd round guy.
Are you surprised? I was about to say, because Dameon Pierce at his peak, right? That offseason, August, early September, when his value was skyrocketing, all the reports were, he hit that 5th, 6th round. He delivered on those expectations, if not more, before getting hurt, right? Obviously, slowed down a bit.
Yeah, let me look him up on my worksheet.
Terp, or I guess I'm asking, are you almost surprised that his ADP's kind of stayed consistent where it was?
Gone down since the.
It's definitely gone down a little bit.
Yeah.
Since the Singletary news.
Yeah.
I'm just saying compared to last year. Like, he's getting drafted at the same point he was last year.
There's a lot of questions with that team. I mean, new coaching staff, who's playing quarterback. The receivers are still, game scripts. They're probably going to be behind a lot of games. So, can he catch passes? I mean, he's definitely talented enough to do it, but, the jury's still out.
He's just an electric. He reminds me a little.
Running the ball, you're not going to find many better guys right now. And especially if you're doing the zero.
And my
RB,
sheet doesn't want to open up right now. So
if you're rocking the 0 RB start and just going, 4 receivers, tight end, maybe mix the quarterback, he's a perfect person to start your running back room with.
Well, and Aaron Jones in the mid to late 5th round. I mean,
what's your reasoning? Because I was a name, as you mentioned, that you're heavy on. What's your reasoning behind being kind of all on Aaron Jones?
Well, Aaron Jones was a 1st and 2nd round pick the last 3 years, and nothing has changed other than Aaron Rodgers left. But Rodgers wasn't throwing the ball like he used to.
The same stance with Dalvin Cook?
Well, Dalvin, I think, is starting to slow down. And I don't think Aaron Jones is starting to slow down. And there's uncertainty with Dalvin. I mix them in. I don't just take Aaron Jones. I take some Dalvin. But Dalvin scares me, and it makes me wish I had taken more Madison when he was really cheap.
Two interesting names, Jones and Dalvin, and I'm sure we'll honestly talk about both extensively as the months progress, right? But those are 2 guys who Aaron Jones was running back 8 overall last year. Dalvin was running back 9, and they're both kind of going in the 5th round.
That's my point.
Yeah,
that's exactly my point. Here, I got my sheet up at running back. So let's start with Aaron Jones. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm curious to see where Leonard Fournette's going to go.
And it's hurt. I mean, I think Fournette's a little bit different than Jones and Dalvin because the situation's unknown, and he was a lot of a product.
Same thing with Kareem Hunt.
All right,
but
so Aaron Jones,
11 last year.
Aaron Jones in the FFPC last year had a 19% advance rate. He had 56.3% of his games. He had a usable week. So a usable week in best ball for me is, because the FFPC has 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight end and 2 flexes, that's 72 players, right? And then I take 1 point below that because that's still pretty usable. Aaron Jones had a 56% of his weeks as usable, but he gave you the other thing I track is called points above usable. So let's say, the 72nd minus 1 point score in a given week was 10 points, right? That's the floor for that week. Any points you get above 10 is considered a point above usable. And then I break that down into the amount of games that you played. So the number one running back last year was Eckler with 12.5 POU. McCaffrey had 11. Josh Jacobs 10.5. Derrick Henry 9.8. I heard you talking about him earlier. Barkley 7.8. Pollard 7.4. Mixon 7.2. Then Ramondre at 6.1. So Aaron Jones is like the 12th or 13th best at giving you points above usable. His floor is not great, but I also think you could see him catching more passes with Jordan Love than you might with Aaron Rodgers. I think the dump off will be more in play. Let me see if now it's freezing up again. Dameon Pierce had 70% of his weeks were usable, and he gave you 4.2 points above the floor on average. So I just think, as that offense improves, there's a lot of room for Pierce to grow. And I don't think Singletary is going to get much more usage than what they gave the combination of other backs who spelled Pierce last year.
Todd, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to ask you one more question. Then I'll get you on out of here. I want me and Terp kind of hinted at it with the tight end classes here, rookie wise. You kind of mentioned you're kind of staying away from these receivers. Of the rookie tight ends, is there anyone that has caught your eye? It's Michael Mayer here went in the 13th. Can't see it. I can scroll up if you want. Dalton Kincaid went first pick of the 11th. And obviously Darnell Washington's there. Luke Musgrave's getting buzz. Who are you on of the rookie tight end class, which could be a historic rookie tight end class and hopefully some impact fantasy contributors from day one?
Yeah, I was on Kincaid early, but because of Likely and Jelani Woods. I wasn't taking too much of them. I still have some tight ends to watch, but I definitely like Laporta.
Mm-hmm.
I think Musgrave is not going to do much year one. I love Darnell Washington as a football player. And I think he's going to be on the field simply because he's such a huge advantage as a blocker, right? So I think he'll catch 30 or 40 balls almost by accident, right? Just by being on the field as much as he is. And I think long-term, he could be the best of the tight ends in this class. Because again, I like athletic freaks.
He's definitely one of them.
And remember, he played in college with Brock Bowers, who's going to be, really, really hyped next year.
Top 10 pick, likely.
Yeah. So not Isaiah likely, though. Hey, can we talk about one more thing before you go? What team are you guys?
None of the above. We're just here talking.
We're neutral.
Oh, you're just talking. Gotcha.
Yeah, I just sat this one out.
Yeah. All right. Well, one other thing I'd like to talk about, if you don't mind, before you kick me out.
Of course.
Can you go to the beginning of Team 1?
Yep.
And you guys know that I host my own show for years. And I also wanted to announce that I have signed to do a weekly best ball show for Sharp Football Analysis. That's going to start next week. We're going to have Hayden Winks as my first guest. And, we'll do a monthly live draft. We're going to definitely cover, you guys know how much I love the FFPC. There's going to be plenty of FFPC content. And of course you have to cover Underdog and a little bit of DraftKings as well. But Hayden Winks week 1, TJ Hernandez week 2, and Rich Rebar week 3.
Some big names right there.
Yeah, we're gonna kick it off, and I got plans to really try and do some interesting things. All right, so I want to ask you guys a question. What do you think about the strategy of Team 1 at quarterback?
I've seen it a good amount in drafts early. I don't hate it. I mean, they're clearly falling in love with stacking a little too much, maybe. Hurts, it's where he's supposed to go, I would think. Chase number 1, you could argue that, but that's not really relevant. Devonta Smith is going, right around there. So with Hurts, it makes sense. But his running back position, man, it's just too much of a risk for me. I just feel like Pacheco, there's no guarantee he's going to have the job. It's likely, but they're bringing somebody in, whether it's McKinnon back or a rookie. Maybe it's an impact rookie.
But not Isaiah likely.
Not Isaiah likely again. That's your boy. I know he's your guy. Algier, there's questions there. Like, is he good? Is he just, happened to be, the right situation, right time?
Did he fall into an 1,000-yard season just by chance?
And Roschon Johnson, as much as we all like him, as your third running back, that's a gamble for me.
My sheet's giving me a hard time, but what I did when these quarterbacks went up 2 to 3 rounds for the top guys. So one of my key strategies last year was to try and take 2 good quarterbacks in that 5th to 8th, that second tier, right? I had an underdog team that came in 60th out of 470,000 teams.
That's ridiculous.
And it had Mahomes and Joe Burrow. Now I got a round value on each of them, right? But to me, when you're drafting 2 players that high and only one of them a week can score for you, I feel that's too much, right? And
look at the other positions.
If that team somehow gets to the playoffs, it could be dangerous. But the other thing you got to realize is in the FFPC, it's because of how many teams, it's so different than underdog. 25% of the teams advance each week. You don't have to have that kind of.
You don't have to be perfect every weekend.
No. And so he's made himself so fragile.
Look at his tight end. His number 1 tight end.
I mean, to me, honestly, that team is probably DOA. And, and then you look at team 11 who did the same thing with Fields and Lamar Jackson. Now, I love Fields and I like Lamar. I think you have to have some Lamar just because of the talent. Remember, back to my point about, not fading guys who can actually win leagues, right? If I end up with 8% or 10% of Lamar Jackson, my leverage on that is the 90 or 92% of my other teams where I don't have him, right? But those teams I'm building as if he is going to play and he is going to crush, right? But I don't want that with another quarterback who is, drafted that high. I think that strategy, even teams, which one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You got 3 teams who took 2 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds. And to me, that's too
4. Because 4 with Watson is even crazier.
Watson. I mean, you're taking Josh Allen, and it's pretty much Josh Allen and nobody else.
Yeah, and it does make the rest of the we didn't talk about quarterback. I am underweight on the top 3 guys because the second round is just so hard. But I have a lot of Dak, I have a lot of Watson, and a decent amount of Tua. 3 guys that I think could. Last year that whole second tier collapsed. Russ, Stafford.
Disaster.
I mean, you name it, yeah. And that was my strategy. So it was amazing. I made money last year. But historically, that second tier always has one guy who the next year ends up in the first tier.
Yeah.
Right. So I've got a lot of Dak and a lot of Deshaun Watson. And I think Deshaun Watson played so poorly, but if he hadn't, he'd be going a couple rounds earlier. So to have 15, 18% of him betting that was just rust that'll come off, and now you've got more weapons and a team that seems to want to pass more. I like betting on Watson. So thanks for letting me ramble.
No
worries. Ramble anytime you want.
Well, it's to the benefit of both us and our viewers, so we very much appreciate it, sir. Todd Burrows at Best Ball NFL. Give him a follow on Twitter. Thank you for joining us, sir.
One of the best in the game. Make sure you follow.
It was nice meeting you. Yep. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, we're trying our best. Thank you so much.
All right, guys.
We'll love to have you on again at some time in the near future. Todd Burrows, ladies and gentlemen. Terp, fantastic, as always, giving us all the details we need. A lot of great
This
takes.
is one of the quickest drafts ever.
I was about to say we had all that great conversation.
I mean,
Come back. We're in the 19th round. Terp, I know it's we're all kind of now looking at it, right? Like a little bit just scrambling.
of course.
Any picture liking in this kind of second half of the draft? And then we kind of missed out on it. But
He talked about Marvin Mims when we were talking about rookie receivers. I mean, he's definitely a guy that I like too. You know, Blaine McFarland just wrote a nice piece up on him, and usually he bumps up 2 rounds every time he puts something out there. So it's definitely something to take a look at it. If you don't know much about Marvin Mims, I think he's a very talented kid.
One of the most athletic receivers to hit the draft.
Scoring. The talent is there. Again, it comes down to fit, but he's definitely a guy that I feel like could break out. You know, if given the right opportunity, if he finds a way to land, with Kansas City, who everybody's using that as the popular breakout spot this year because there's so many questions right now at the receiver position with Sky Moore, Tony, MVS, and then maybe they get in the running with Hopkins if he gets cut. But I mean, any rookie that gets there is in a great spot. Besides that, I don't think Mac Hollins is a terrible best ball pick. I mean, is Atlanta the juiciest fantasy spot? No. But behind Drake London and Kyle Pitts, who they seem to hate, Mac Hollins showed flashes last year. And in the 19th round as your last receiver, who's mostly in drafts not getting drafted, not terrible. John Michie is another guy that is free in drafts right now. And if for whatever reason they take Bryce Young, they have that connection there. That's something to definitely watch, with a team that won't be very good, developing a rookie quarterback with somebody he's familiar with. Another guy. Who else?
I scrolled back up because that 11th round, he went, 2 picks after his teammate? Antonio Gibson's talent with Eric Bieniemy? Like, you really think Eric Bieniemy's not going to lose?
I've been on him a lot more. I think he's definitely somebody to watch. In the drafts where he's getting, Todd said, bet on talent. Antonio Gibson has plenty of it. It's just the right opportunity, the right coaching staff. Can Eric Bieniemy unlock him? I think he's worth gambling on.
I think the value is finally right to do it, right? Like, I would be very comfortable taking that 11th, 12th round, just because I do think that Bieniemy is going to utilize him way more than the past Washington kind of offenses did. By pass, I really just mean last year, because we saw what he could do as a rookie, and he was a receiver in college. Like, I think Bieniemy is going to fall in love with that, and he's just better than Brian Robinson. I know Brian Robinson had a great story, but I simply put,
I couldn't agree with anything. Everything you said is spot on.
Just there's kind of the trendy term, the post-hype sleeper, right? The guys who are getting a ton of hype for either a breakout or just build on successful campaigns, and they kind of fall flat on their face. I believe I could scroll back up. Cortland Sutton went in the 9th round in this one. He was one of your guys. You're looking at Darnell Mooney here in the 13th, 2 years. Are you back on either of them, or you're off? Are they either of them candidates?
I mean, Cortland Sutton in the 9th round. I mean, I didn't like what I see. I watched a lot of Denver games in pain last year. And I know Russ was a disaster. The offensive coordinator was a disaster. But I didn't really like what I saw at Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy was clearly the more explosive, player. Could he rebound at the 9th round? Is he worth his chance? Will Sean Payton unlock all that? I think it's a possibility. Will I be overweight on Cortland Sutton? No. Mooney, he's not a guy I'll be drafting much of. I mean, I feel like it's Justin Fields, a little bit of DJ Moore. But besides that, there's nobody in there that I'm really in love with. I just feel like best ball, maybe you get some spike weeks, but consistency is going to be really, really tough because Justin Fields needs to take the Jalen Hurts leap as a passer. And there's questions because you don't know if he's going to do that. There's still going to be run the ball a ton. So to me, it's Justin Fields naked by himself, DJ Moore a little bit, and the rest of the guys are just probably fades for me right now.
I was looking at.
I'm going to bring up a name real quick for you.
Yep.
A guy that I've been drafting, as much as I can, and always for the rest of the summer, I'll be drafting as much as I can. KJ Osborne. I feel like nobody's talking about him. I feel like the spot makes all the sense in the world. He showed plenty of flashes last year, especially, in the money rounds of what he could be. Adam Thielen's out of town. Yeah, I know Hawkinson's there, but a team that's still going to be throwing the ball a ton. Justin Jefferson's going to get a lot of attention. Could they add a rookie that messes things up? Yes, but it just makes too much sense for me. I could be totally wrong, but KJ Osborne's just a guy that I just every time I see him, it's just like click, click, click.
He very well could end up being the wide receiver too, not including obviously Hawkinson in a dynamic offense. Say what you will about the Vikings, I think that offense should produce with O'Connell there.
I agree.
That 12th round has some really interesting names. We kind of mentioned, we talked about Gainwell. We mentioned Fournette. I can't buy it, but there is part of me that's looking like he did finish RB11 last year. It kind of depends on where he goes.
I think Leonard Fournette in Kansas City, like
it just it goes back to you got to kind of look at the reasoning. Like Dalvin had some really good games, and he still looked very good. I don't think Leonard got to the RB11.
No, Leonard Fournette did not look good at all this year. I mean, I think he caught like 10 passes in the game, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
like,
yeah. I mean,
that's not happening.
He had that opening Sunday night game against Dallas rushing, and then after that, he had a 3-touchdown game, and then he had a couple of big booms that kind of boosted it. But Jalen Warren's another name, just kind of rattling off names. I mean, you look at the analytic. Jalen Warren's an analytic starling in a limited.
Oh my God, Zay Jones is another name. Like if you're not buying into Calvin Ridley, like I love Calvin Ridley, a player, but he sat out a year and a half almost. Like, is he ready to get back out there? And
I look at it two ways though.
Be an impact player.
He was banged up. That's a year to get completely healthy. You're not taking hits.
Yes, but it's also like I don't know. I just Calvin Ridley's a guy that I'm on a little bit of a fade right now. I love the player. I think he could be like a down, but I could see him getting hurt early in the season. Something about missing a year and a half. Like I saw what happened to Deshaun Watson, and how many success stories has there been of guys missing that long a time and coming right back in and just hitting the ground running? And then on a team that is primed to make a deep run in the playoffs, they have a ton of talent. I mean, you saw Zay Jones last year. He was a monster, especially down the stretch. I don't think they're just going to forget about him. And in the 12th round, with an offense that explosive, I'm still in.
The Jaguars should run that division theoretically for at least a couple of years.
I mean, there's nobody in that division. Like, yeah, the Colts are always the trendy, like, yeah, if we get a quarterback pick, but no, it's Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is, you could say, the 4th best team in the AFC. I could see you saying they could be better than like Buffalo. I don't think it's crazy.
I was about to say, I mean, Buffalo,
Kansas City or Cincinnati? No, I don't.
Could come back to haunt me. I don't think it will. I think I'm confidently saying Buffalo missed their window.
I don't. Buffalo just once Josh Allen gets that money, they are literally, the defense is always a question, and it just seems like Josh Allen just always makes that big mistake. Diggs, you saw that playoff blow up last year. It's only a matter of time. And he came there, to win. And when they started, it was their time. This year, they were the pick. They started off the season like gangbusters and then just fell into that little lull and never recovered. But I don't know. I'm with you there. People are saying that the Dolphins are the best team in that division. I mean,
it's kind of a believe when you see it, but you look at the offense, it's all dependent on Tua. Because that defense with Vic Fangio.
Couldn't have said it any better myself.
All
Tua healthy, playing the way he played before he got hurt. The Dolphins are probably, if not the best, right there with the Bills. But
I mean, hear me out.
He's one hit away from.
My good friend's a Dolphins fan, diehard, which is a tough place to be in. I don't think he's ever seen
the same guy who's a Timberwolves fan. Just curious.
No. He wasn't that guy. That guy wasn't even a Timberwolves fan. He just was a Timberwolves believer. But my friend who's a Dolphins fan, he always reminds us, Dolphins lost by like 3 with a backup quarterback in Buffalo in the playoffs. Yeah. Like they were almost there without Tua. So I think
with a lot of freak stuff that happened too. I mean, it wasn't like the game.
Aaron Rodgers is probably going to the Jets. That division, poor Patriots.
And the Jets defense is no joke.
Patriots
Aaron Rodgers can get there and be 75% of old Aaron Rodgers. Oh boy! I mean, Garrett Wilson, Lazard, Hardman. If they sign Odell Beckham, a healthy Breece Hall. I mean, that offensive line is solid. The Jets are definitely not somebody to sleep on either. That's the toughest division in football, in my opinion.
I think the Patriots are just going to be bad.
Dust. Just complete dust.
Terp, let's get out of here. Our quickest live draft coverage ever. Like, that
Crazy.
was shocking.
Because usually I'm talking during my pick and I'm blabbing and all this stuff. I actually kind of enjoy not drafting, even though I'm still going to do plenty of these as the summer goes on. But it's actually fun just to sit here and just look at the draft and just not be involved.
I mean, we're just shooting the shit with our viewers, right? Watching the draft as it unfolds.
That's it.
I'm scroll back to the top as always. Obviously, we're talking with Todd, right? We had a great conversation. We kind of missed kind of the second half of that draft. We hopefully showed it enough there in the last about 10 minutes. Any team that really caught your eye, you think had a really successful draft?
It's still number 10 for me. I mean, number 10, number 7, I agree with you there. I mean, there's other drafts. It looks like number 4 auto drafted.
And they came in at the end, but auto draft didn't do too.
It did a great job with the auto draft.
Besides Mixon, I don't think I'm hating it too many of them. I mean, you get Jefferson at 4. That's such a win. He came in here, it looks like in the 9th round. But besides Mixon, who's another guy.
But you look at his top 8 picks. I don't have negative to say. I mean, I'm not a big Mark Andrews guy, but still, nothing negative to say about them.
No, I think, and then Kyler, don't know.
Getting the upside of Kyler, even though I'm not a believer. Getting the upside of Lance, I am a believer. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of guys in the tight end room. Does Elliott sign somewhere that makes sense? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that draft at all.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned looking at team 8. I think team 7 and 8. We both mentioned 7 really
Where's
strong.
The negative? Quarterback. Okay.
Yeah, Goff, Carr. I mean, did they take a high ceiling? Ritter. Yeah, quarterback's a little bit of a concern there.
Quarterback's the question is can they bring back the points that they're going to lose to the Mahomes, the Hurts, the Fields, the Allens of the world?
Can I give you 2 more names late in the
Let's
draft?
Do
it. Let me make sure that we can see it. We can. I'm gonna get sucked into it, but Odell Beckham. I mean, depending on where he goes, we saw him with. It's so you're getting sucked into that small sample size.
16th round. I don't think it's a bad pick.
But I'm just saying, there's been rumors. If he goes to like Baltimore, then no, I'm out.
No,
but I'm saying right
even
here,
if they have Lamar Jackson, no.
There's rumors that some of these high-powered offenses he might be interested in. He's
Jets,
asking for too much, but yeah,
he's asking for too much. The Jets, as much as it might but there's so many guys. If any, everybody knows that Garrett Wilson's a guy I love. He's a guy I'll draft every time I can. But with all these guys, the Aaron Rodgers things is starting to tickle at me a little bit. Like, is Aaron Rodgers all these guys he's bringing in? Does this hurt Garrett Wilson? Is Garrett Wilson it's been confusing me lately. I've been trying to do some research on it. This in my brain, is Garrett Wilson going to be Davante Adams? He should be. But is there Aaron Rodgers? He's just this weird aura surrounding him and just something new team. Is he going to just try to do it his way type of situation? It has me worried.
I think you're betting on the talent. So look, and we'll get out of here in a second, but you're looking at a Garrett Wilson 2-3 mark, 15th overall.
Exactly where he should be drafted. Nothing, if anything, with Aaron Rodgers, I could say he should be drafted over Davante Adams. I wouldn't take him over any of the guys, besides that, at least now. But,
it's just hard to picture. He did what he did with Mike White, Zach Wilson, Strevler, right? And
yeah.
Why couldn't he do that? Even if
I'm drafting 12 here, I'm drafting.
How's he not going to improve with Aaron Rodgers?
If I'm drafting here, I'm drafting AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson. That's my start if I'm 12.
Okay.
I have nothing against Bijan Robinson. We've talked about it earlier in the show, but I just feel there's just too many bad spots he can land, and those bad spots could really just put a hamper on your draft, especially if you're just going Bijan Robinson and you're just filling it in with some average guys, middle of this 8th, 9th, 10th round, which this drafter kind of did. He took Stevenson, but after Stevenson, there's nobody in the top 10 rounds. That's a risk with Bijan Robinson because by the time he starts breaking out, you might be in trouble.
Yep. Terp, that's going to do it for us. Successful first live draft coverage to many more this year. I'm sure probably our next one is probably going to be the best ball tournament. Maybe throw a Fantasy Pros Championship in there, but we'll be back You said you like it. I do enjoy you joining me kind of as a neutral party. I'm sure we'll have some this year where you'll be in the draft room, some without.
There'll be plenty when I'm in it. There'll be plenty that people will be sniping me and telling me how terrible my team is. And don't worry, I was a little nice with this one, but the nice guy thing is not going to work. So I'm going to go back to telling you your team sucks, and maybe it bites me, maybe it doesn't, but it's definitely more fun when I'm in it.
Terp, before we go though, Team 8 is asking us their thoughts on them. We mentioned them. They said they were going for the all hype team. I think you kind of mentioned it. Maybe QB was a bit of an issue here, right? Kind of similar here, Gino. But I'm a big fan of the start. I think I
love the start. Love the start. Who else is in the quarterback room besides Gino?
Who else is in it? Stafford and Anthony Richardson. I'm a big fan of this draft. I mentioned
it all comes down to the quarterbacks. If Gino is Gino of last year and Stafford can get something back with Cup, no questions. And Anthony Richardson turns into that guy that wins the league at the end of the season, sky's the limit with this team. They are definitely the hype team.
I would
have plenty of talent. Treylon Burks.
Yeah, Penny's going to win Williams, 4 weeks, right? He's going to
Penny, Gibson. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can keep going. Jawan Johnson coming off a very solid season. With Derek Carr, Kyle Pitts is always the hype surrounding him. I mean, he pretty much ruined fantasy dreams last year. But this team has a ton of talent and is definitely in the making of one of the best in this league, if the quarterbacks pan out.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for us. We'll be back, as we said, a Fantasy Pros Championship, best ball tournament. Both of those, we'll probably aim for our next live draft coverage after the NFL draft. We wanted to get one in before. Who knows? We may do one more, never too early. We'll see how it's going.
Maybe.
But that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for all who tuned in. We'll be back in the next month or so doing another one of these. You can follow me at Twitter at Liquorie. Follow Terp at Dave Terp. Sign up for the Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, $125 entry, $25,000 grand prize, over $170,000 in total prize. Only 400 teams left. It's going to sell out. Get in now. Last day to draft in this tournament is April 27th, which is the day of the NFL draft. So again, that's going to do it for
myself. Don't forget to get your main event money in either. Main event discounts are going to run out soon, so try to get your discounts early. Get your $100 money in and go get that million.
For sure. And Fantasy Pros Championship, new name, same early bird entry. You can get there for free.
But another $1 million up top, so go get that $2 million.
Another milli. So that's going to do it for us. Sign up for all the FFPC drafts. We'll see you guys soon.